All right. Hey guys. A few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago now, in Phoenix, Myron Golden got up on stage, did a phenomenal presentation. But in it, he talked about a really, really simple way to break down your information into a Roman numeral one, Roman numeral two, Roman numeral three, ABC subpoint way of dividing up your information so that it's easy for your audience to remember. And it hit me when he was talking that that's something I did for close to 30 years in ministry and around the world. I had the chance and the privilege to speak all over the country, all over Latin America, and all together on 5 continents, from to everybody from subsistence farmers about 12,000 feet in the Andes to a large group of community leaders and indigenous leaders in the Congo, in the DRC, actually in the same city where Ebola is breaking out right now, to house church leaders in China. And what I've learned is there's a really, really simple formula that you can use that will take almost any text and can break it down into a way you can present content that can stretch anywhere from 10 minutes to 10 days. I've taken things from the Bible, of course, in ministry, and taken things like the Beatitudes in Matthew 5, 6, and 7, the Sermon on the Mount, and spoken for months at a time on that. There's an incredible way that has just been handed down over the ages called expository speaking, or in religion, expository preaching. But what it is it's a technique to go into a text and pull it apart and use that to extrapolate content. And that's why when you get on TV, or you look on YouTube, or you go to church, or wherever you go, and you have a preacher that'll get up and say a text, and then he'll start to just talk. And if he's basing what he's saying on the text instead of using the text to punctuate what he's saying, what he's doing is called expository preaching. All it is unpacking the information that's there and making it easy to understand in a sequential form. Now, the cool thing about this is if you're struggling to create content, let's say you've got a live event coming up and you've got to speak for 45 minutes. If you're like me, usually you hear that and you go into panic mode and you think, holy cow, how am I going to fill that? If you're a preacher, well, then it's easy. Give me my text and I go to study and I start to unpack stuff, and really I just kind of talk about what's there. If you are not a preacher and you're not basing anything on like a religious text or a pre-existing text, you're kind of stuck often, unless you have a clear set of content ahead of time, and not all of us do. And if you're in that case, then maybe this doesn't apply to you. But if you really want to say something that is going to impact your audience and not just give them information, but truly transform them, one of the easiest ways to generate that content is to go to existing language or existing content, extrapolating that and using it as a framework. Now, let me kind of give you a different way to think about it. In the Bible, in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 5, there's a verse, and it depends on what version you look at. But basically, it says, "Counsel in the heart of a man is like deep water." And it says man, but it could be a man, a woman, anyone. But your understanding, your counsel, your wisdom in your field of expertise, in your niche, in your market vertical, is like this deep well. And if you've been in it for any length of time, you've developed an incredible reservoir of information that is just sitting there and waiting to be drawn out. So how do you do that? Well, the same verse continues and it says, "Counsel in the heart of a man is like a deep well, but a man of understanding will draw it out." So what it's saying is you have the understanding, you've got all the information in your heart, your mind, from your experience that you need. But what you do need, and what you may not have, is some way to reach into that reservoir and pull it out and then communicate it in a way, in a framework that your audience can really benefit from, and that gives you a chance to showcase what you have. Just like all of us that are in here, you have a deep reservoir of knowledge that you are probably not even aware of. The cool thing is if you have a framework that you can draw from, you give yourself a skeleton, and then all you have to do is pull that information out, hang it in the right places, in the right order, and you have this basically unlimited amount of content that you can generate from a simple literary source or scripture source or wisdom source. It could be the Bible, it could be the Quran, it could be the I Ching, it could be Shakespeare, it could be some of the examples that I have here from literature. It could be basically anything. But whatever resonates with you and you think can benefit your audience, that gives you a framework that then you can create a scaffolding that you pull out all the information that's in your head and in your heart, and you hang it on that in an orderly fashion, and you can then take that information and work to create transformation within your community or within your audience. And there's no limit to it. You can go for basically forever. Because once you have that scaffolding, once you have that framework in place, just like those balls, I have one coming from Amazon. Hopefully I'll be able to show you soon. You know, those kind of plastic balls, or you compact them and they're nice and small, but then you pull them apart and they expand. It's exactly the same thing. And the cool thing about this is, if you're struggling to create content, you've got to speak or you got to teach or you got to do whatever, this is going to give you an endless supply of content that you can use to transform your audience, and do it without having to reinvent the wheel or start from scratch every single time. Now, it does take some work. Unfortunately, it's not like Jim Edwards' brilliant methods where you just whack a button and it spits out incredible content. This does take a little bit of effort, but if you're willing to put the time in, the results can be truly transformative for your audience. So that's a quick intro. That's what I want to do. And before we get too far, I want to show you what I did with just some random language that I pulled from the internet. And I'll show you what I ended up with as far as breaking it out. And then in the next video, I'm going to go into how I broke it out, how I decided to kind of break it where I did break it. And you'll see what I mean when I get through these. And then how I go through and actually begin to pull out the handles that I'm going to put on my talk that are going to give my audience the tools and the steps that they need to move forward in whatever the challenge they're facing. So I'm going to go through these really, really quick, and I'll just show you that you can use almost anything. Now, with that caveat, when I say almost anything, I mean, anything that's had some thought put into it. So you could use a Gettysburg Address. You could use anything from the Bible, anything from the Quran, anything from the I Ching, anything from any really great wisdom book or great work of literature. But if you're pulling it from the side of a cereal carton, or like the instructions on the side of a pill bottle, that's not going to work as well. So it's not everything, but it can be almost anything. So first one, I'm showing my geek side. Frank Herbert, his fear litany, I must not fear, fear is the mind killer, all that. This is what it looks like when you copy and paste it from the internet. Just really, really simple text. When you break it down and you break it into a structure that you can start to tear apart and then create a scaffolding for your information, this is what it looks like. And if you'll notice, what I did is I just went down and I used what's called basically the road mark or the road sign, basic grammatical sections in the language, and I used those as a break, and then I indented them to show me visually which ones support the ones above it. So I must not fear, break, period, because there's a period there. Fear is the mind killer, period. Fear is the little death. And then that's a subjunctive phrase that supports fear is the little death, and it qualifies or it explains this. So that's tucked under this line. New thought, I will face my fear, period. I will permit it to pass. That's the next logical step of this. How am I going to do that? Prepositional phrase, over me and through me. These both support this. New line, and when it has gone past, I will, new thought, I will, and then you get into an action phrase. I will turn the inner eye, and then another prepositional phrase, to see its path. Where the fear is gone, break, there will be nothing. So this is another phrase. Only, period, so there's another break there. Only I will remain. Really, really simple. Here's a sonnet from Pablo Neruda. I don't know if you may not be familiar with him. His work's originally in Spanish, and so you lose a little bit sometimes when you go into English. If you know Spanish and you don't know Neruda, he's an incredible wealth of information and great content. It's just like Shakespeare in Spanish. And the language is more modern. So Pablo Neruda, I love you without knowing how, when. This is all just one paragraph. That's what it looks like. But then when you break it down to create a scaffolding or a skeleton for your information, it looks like this. Again, using the same types of breaks and signposts that I used before. Now I have all of this. Now when I can look at it like this visually, my brain then can start to say, each one of these sections, each one of these indentations can be a point in my outline. And then each one of these, if I ask the right questions, can be unpacked farther and farther. I can go deeper and deeper. And it doesn't, and when I'm speaking, I want to clarify this too. When I'm speaking, I don't have to talk about this. This is just a framework. I'm just using it as a skeleton. You know, if you're like me, you're a certain age, you grew up with erector sets and, you know, you screw the metal girders and everything together, or Tinker Toys, or Lincoln Logs, however you want to think about it, or Lego. And for those of us that are a little slow like me, maybe Duplo would be a better example. But you just break it down and you use this as a way to reassemble the information so you get transformation in your audience. J.K. Rowling's the author for the whole Harry Potter series. This is what she wrote, just 2 basic paragraphs, talking about status and your influence in life, and then break it down like this. This gives you, and I didn't even go as detailed as you could break it down. You can break it down even farther, because you can do things like that and break who and who, for the better, prepositional phrase, things like that you could break it down even farther if you need to go into greater detail. But this is a great way to look at the information and start to unpack it and give yourself a scaffolding or a structure that then, when you draw all that wisdom, all that counsel, all of that understanding of your industry and your superpower out of your heart, out of your life, out of your mind, and you want to present it to your audience in a way that's not just information, but a transformation, you can use this as that scaffolding to do it. This is the bucket that you reach into that deep well and you pull out that information, and then you put it up so that your audience has a way to understand it in a way that they can apply it. Herman Melville from Moby Dick, and this is just literally a random quote from him. There's wisdom that is woe, but there's wisdom that is madness. And there's a Catskill eagle that in some souls that can alike dive down into the blackest gorges and soar out of them again and become invisible in the sunny places. And even if he forever flies within the gorge, that gorge in the mountains, so that even his lowest swoop in the mountain eagle is still higher than other birds upon the plain, even though they soar. Awesome content in this short little paragraph here. If you were to break it down grammatically and according to the signposts and just basic chunks of the grammar, it looks like this. Again, it's just giving you a framework so you can hang your information on it. And then here's one that I looked at this morning. Epictetus, great Stoic speaker or thought leader. Not every difficult and dangerous thing is suitable for training, but only that which is conducive to success in achieving the object of our effort. Really, really simple and short. This would be great for a short talk, maybe 15, 20, 45 minutes. Break it down like this, grammatically, super simple. Not every difficult, talk about dangerous things, talk about suitable for training, but only, so this focuses your thought, that which is conducive to what? To success. What kind of success? In achieving the object, what kind of object of our effort? I mean, you have tons to work with here. So again, it's just a framework you can hang your thoughts on. And then in the next video, the one I'm going to unpack is one that was given to me by Steve Warner. I asked our group to send me a quote if they wanted me to unpack it and kind of show them what can happen for a talk. And I was hoping for something a little bit longer. Steve sent this one, but it was actually really, really fun. This is the quote, Seneca. So you can do it with something super short. When I broke it down, it looks like this. And in the next video, I'm going to show you what I did to create an entire page worth of notes. That's just raw material that then in the video after that, or a couple of after that, I'll show you how the filters and the questions that you can run that through that will give you the handles to put on it that will meet your customers or your audience's needs. The great thing about this is once you have all this broken down, you could use the same pages of notes You could talk to 4, 5, 6 completely different audiences with completely different perspectives and completely different wants and needs. And if you've done the work to unpack this and kind of pull out all of your understanding and put it down on the page, it's just like raw clay on a potter's wheel. You can shape it into anything that you want. You want to make a coffee mug? Great. You want to make a breakfast cereal bowl? That's great. You want to make a pretty vase? You can do that. It's incredibly flexible. And then the benefit is you have material that you can use at a moment's notice to go and speak. And if your buddy says, hey, I've got a conference coming up, I need somebody to do a 30-minute segment on blank, can you fill the bill? You can easily say, yeah, I've got tons of material. How long do you want me to talk? 30 minutes? I can easily do that. Go back here, unpack it, match your audience's wants and needs, speak to what they're really wanting, and you knock it out of the park. So that's it. Hope you stay tuned for the next video.